The moment my mother passed the turkey to my sister and said, "She doesn't deserve to sit here anymore," I knew Thanksgiving was never about gratitude. It was about my removal. My name is Julia Prescott. I'm 32 years old, and I had been preparing for this moment for years, though I didn't know it at the time, at least not consciously. I sat frozen, my fork hovering over a plate I wasn't even hungry for. The room felt smaller all of a sudden, the chatter and laughter of my family twisting into a mocking echo. My heart pounded so loud I thought the neighbors might hear. I had flown across the country to be here, to bridge the growing distance between me and my family. I wanted, as I always had, to belong. I wanted to share in the small comforts, laughter, shared memories, the quiet warmth of acceptance. But as my mother's words sank in, the truth hit harder than any knife. The very people I had loved unconditionally were ready to erase me from their narrative, and they had no shame in saying it aloud. I remember sitting there, frozen, thinking, did I misread every smile, every hug, every word of encouragement growing up? Was all of it a setup for this exact humiliation? Before I tell you what happened next, let me be honest. If you've ever felt like the people who are supposed to protect you, who are supposed to love you without condition, are the same ones who might betray you, then you know this feeling. It's a cold, sharp clarity, a moment where your childhood and adulthood collide into one unbearable reality. But I don't want you to stop reading now. This story isn't just about betrayal. It's about preparation, resilience, and the moment when you finally see the truth. Stick with me, because what happened next changed everything about my family and about me. It started years earlier, though I only understood the full pattern in retrospect. My sister, Vanessa, 3 years younger than me, had always been the golden child. She excelled in ways I struggled to. Grades, charm, popularity, and later a seemingly effortless ability to win my parents' approval. I loved her, truly, and part of me still does, but I learned early that love wasn't always reciprocal in our family. My childhood was a careful dance. I learned how to speak in ways that pleased my parents, how to hide my disappointments so they wouldn't become another reason for criticism. I watched Vanessa receive praise for minimal effort while I worked tirelessly, my achievements quietly noted, or worse, quietly resented. The first Thanksgiving I remember feeling truly invisible, I was 12. I had baked a pumpkin pie all by myself, staying up late to perfect it, proud of the golden crust and the sweet, spicy aroma filling the kitchen. My mother barely tasted it. She smiled at Vanessa instead, telling her, "You're so helpful. You've saved me so much time this year." I remember holding back tears, the sting of rejection sharper than any schoolyard insult. That moment planted a seed in me, one that wouldn't bloom fully until years later. And here I was, 32, sitting at that same table, fighting a familiar knot of hurt and disbelief. Only this time, the stakes were higher. My mother wasn't just ignoring me, she was actively shoving me out, making the humiliation public. The cousins, the aunts, even my father's quiet stare, they all became spectators in a play where I was the villain without reason. As I sat there, replaying decades of subtle slights, I realized something. I had been preparing for this without even knowing it. Every late night spent learning negotiation and self-defense, every dollar saved for independence, every careful choice to cultivate emotional resilience, it all led to this. I wasn't going to crumble. Not today. Not in front of them. I took a deep breath and decided I needed a way to survive the rest of the evening. I would smile, nod, and eat my turkey. But inside, a plan began to form. A plan to reclaim the power they thought they had over me. But then, just as I thought I could handle the storm with quiet dignity, Vanessa leaned over, whispering something that made my blood run cold. She smiled, that innocent, practiced smile, the same one she used when she won arguments she hadn't actually had. Mom's made sure you won't get a single thing this year, Julia. Not the inheritance, not Dad's trust, not even Aunt Lorraine's little gift. Her words were venom coated in sugar. I wanted to scream, to throw the plate across the room, but I forced my lips to a calm, polite smile. The room didn't need a scene, at least not yet. I had to think, I had to plan, I had to survive. And as I forced myself to chew and swallow, I realized something terrifying. This wasn't just Thanksgiving. It was a battlefield. I looked around the table, noting who watched, who whispered, who laughed. Some faces were neutral, some were complicit, and one, sitting silently at the head of the table, was calculating, the one whose betrayal I had not anticipated at all. By the time dessert came, I knew I only had two choices: play along or make a move that would shock them all. And then the first gift was handed out. I tore open the wrapping, expecting something small and harmless, a scented candle maybe, a scarf. But instead, I found a folded envelope, my name on it in my mother's elegant script. Inside was a letter that would expose secrets I never imagined, secrets that would change everything about my family and my own life. I held the envelope in my hands, feeling the weight of it, both physically and emotionally. The paper was thick, expensive, the kind of stationery my mother used when she wanted to make something feel official. My fingers trembled slightly as I broke the seal, and the smell of the ink hit me like an old memory, familiar, sharp, and suffocating all at once. Inside was a single sheet, neatly typed, no handwriting. My mother had always preferred formality over sentimentality, and this letter was no exception. Julia, we have decided that you will not be included in the family trust or any inheritances. Your contributions over the years have not met expectations. Your sister Vanessa will be the primary beneficiary of all assets. Consider this our final decision. I blinked. The words blurred before my eyes, though I knew exactly what they said. My chest tightened. I felt the sting of betrayal so sharply that for a moment I thought I might pass out right there at the table. Vanessa's smile widened ever so slightly, as if she had just handed me a death sentence disguised as a piece of paper. I forced myself to breathe, slow and deliberate, reminding myself, Julia, you've prepared for this. You are not powerless. The room hummed with casual chatter as if nothing had happened. My father picked up his glass and toasted Vanessa's health. My mother's eyes flicked toward me once, sharp, calculating, and then she returned to her conversation, leaving me to stew in a mix of anger, disbelief, and a rising, determined clarity. Flashbacks rushed in unbidden, vivid and painful. I remembered my childhood bedroom, walls lined with trophies and ribbons I had won. They'd always seemed to vanish into the ether when my parents praised Vanessa. I remembered the time I had stayed up nights studying for college entrance exams while Vanessa went out to parties, yet somehow she had convinced my mother that she needed more support, more attention. I remembered my first job out of college, where I worked double shifts to save rent money, only to hear my mother remark that Vanessa had more talent for leadership and charm. All of it culminated in this letter, this declaration that I was, in my mother's eyes, replaceable, unnecessary, unworthy. And yet, despite the sting, there was a strange calm washing over me. This clarity, born from years of subtle manipulation, suddenly became fuel. I had been preparing for this, not for revenge, not in the fiery, dramatic sense, but for survival, independence, and control over my own life. I folded the letter carefully and slipped it into my purse. My hands no longer shook. My mind no longer raced with panic. I knew exactly what I needed to do. But before I could even process my plan, Vanessa leaned closer again, her voice soft, poisonous. You're probably wondering why Mom did this, aren't you? She's just worried about protecting her favorite. But don't worry, Julia. She's thinking about the bigger picture. Her words dripped with condescension. I wanted to snap at her, to throw the letter across the table, to expose her for the manipulative snake I now clearly saw her as. But I bit back every urge. I would not let her win. Not tonight. Instead, I excused myself under the pretense of checking on something in the kitchen. My steps were deliberate, quiet, and calculated. As I passed through the hallway, I noticed my mother peering from the living room, a faint smile tugging at the corners of her lips. It was the smile of someone who believed she had all the power. And in that moment, I knew she had no idea how much I had anticipated this exact scenario. Years of careful saving, discreet planning, and emotional preparation had led me to this point. She might have stripped me of inheritance in her eyes, but she could never take the one thing I had been quietly building, my independence. I opened the kitchen door and leaned against the counter, letting the silence wash over me. My mind replayed a conversation I had had with my therapist just months ago, one that had seemed irrelevant at the time. "You can't control what other people do," she had said, "but you can control how you react. And sometimes the most powerful thing is not confrontation, it's preparation, patience, and self-reliance." That was exactly what I was doing. And then, as I poured myself a glass of water, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. On the kitchen counter, almost hidden under a stack of napkins, was a photograph I had never seen before. A family photo, yes, but one that included someone who shouldn't have been there, someone from my past who had connections to my mother's secret dealings, someone whose presence now threatened to unravel the facade of control she had spent years maintaining. I picked up the photo, heart racing. The person in it was smiling in a way that made me want to scream and cry at the same time. How deep did this go, I wondered? What else had been orchestrated behind my back? I knew then that Thanksgiving was never just a meal. It was a test. And somehow, I had just discovered that I wasn't just the target. I was the key to uncovering secrets no one in my family wanted revealed. But the moment I turned the photo over, my phone buzzed in my purse, a text message from an unknown number. "If you think you know the truth, you're only scratching the surface. Meet me in the garage, alone." I froze. Every instinct screamed at me: danger, betrayal, deception. Yet another part of me, the part that had spent years preparing for betrayal, felt a surge of controlled excitement. This was the next step, the next clue, the moment where preparation met action. I glanced back toward the living room, my family laughing and sharing stories, completely unaware of what was unfolding just steps away from them. My stomach twisted. Do I risk it? The answer was already forming in my mind. Yes, I would go. I had to know. And as I stepped toward the garage door, heart pounding, I had no idea that the person waiting there would reveal something far more shocking than any inheritance dispute, a secret that would call into question everything I believed about my mother, my sister, and even myself. I reached the garage door, hand on the handle, and the text buzzed again. "Don't trust anyone inside, not even Vanessa, not even your mother. You're about to find out who really controls this family, and it's not who you think." I paused, heart hammering. The cold night air pressed against the window panes. One step and everything would change. The garage door felt heavier than it should have, as if it were guarding a secret it didn't want me to see. My hand trembled slightly, but not with fear, more with anticipation. Years of careful preparation, of silently observing, of quietly building resilience had led to this moment. I opened it. The air inside was cold, stale, and smelt faintly of motor oil. Shadows clung to the corners, stretching unnaturally under the single bare bulb hanging from the ceiling. I squinted, scanning for movement. My pulse quickened. Then a voice, low, deliberate, unfamiliar, cut through the silence. Julia Prescott. I froze. The voice was calm but had a weight to it, the kind that commands attention. Slowly, I stepped further inside, my eyes adjusting. There, leaning against a workbench, was a man I hadn't seen in over a decade. His presence alone sent a jolt through my chest. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with hair flecked gray and eyes that seemed to pierce straight through me. My mind scrambled, trying to place him, but all I could think was, how is he here? Why now? "Do I know you?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. He shook his head, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "Not yet, but you will." My grip tightened on the photograph I had found moments earlier. It was in his hand now, unmistakably familiar to him. "Where did you get this?" he asked, his tone more curious than accusatory. I hesitated. It was on the counter. My mother—" He cut me off with a sharp gesture. "Stop. Don't tell me anything yet. You're in danger if they know you found this." I swallowed hard, confusion twisting with rising adrenaline. Who's in danger? Who are you?" "I'm someone who knows the truth about your family, and believe me, Julia, what you think you know, it's only the surface." My stomach tightened. I wanted to back away, to run, to retreat to the safety of the living room where my family laughed and pretended everything was normal. But something inside me refused. I had come this far. I couldn't turn back now. He gestured toward the photograph. "Do you recognize everyone in this?" I looked closely. There were faces I knew, my mother, my father, Vanessa, and one that shouldn't have been there. "Who is that?" I asked, pointing. "That, Julia, is someone your mother brought into the family's inner circle years ago, someone whose loyalty isn't to blood, but to power and control. And they've been orchestrating much of what you see. Every slight, every favor, every betrayal has been part of a carefully constructed plan." I took a step back, my heart hammering. My mother orchestrated all of this? He nodded slowly. "Not entirely alone. She has allies you never suspected. And the letter you received tonight, that's just the beginning." My mind reeled. Every Thanksgiving, every family gathering, every subtle act of exclusion or favoritism, it suddenly all made sense. I had thought Vanessa's charm and my mother's coldness were personal failings, but this was calculated. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Because you're ready," he said simply, "and because if you don't act, you'll continue to be a pawn in a game you weren't even aware you were playing. Tonight, Julia, you have a choice. Stay blind or see the full truth." I glanced toward the garage door, the warm light of the house beyond, the voices of my family laughing, unaware of the storm brewing in the shadows. I realized how carefully I had always measured my actions, my words, my very existence. So many years, and yet I had barely scratched the surface of the web my family had spun. "What do I need to do?" I asked, my resolve hardening. He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "You need to understand that your family isn't what you think it is. Every act of kindness, every hug, every smile, they're all part of a script. And right now, Vanessa and your mother are moving pieces. The real question is, how far are you willing to go to reclaim your life?" I felt a surge of something I hadn't felt in years. Clarity mixed with rage, determination mixed with fear. I realized that my preparation, my patience, my quiet resilience, every moment of perceived weakness had been building toward this exact confrontation. "Show me," I said, my voice firm. "Show me everything." He nodded, pulling a small leather-bound folder from his coat. Inside were documents, photographs, and correspondences, evidence that my mother and Vanessa had manipulated, lied, and deceived not just me, but nearly every family member in some way. There were financial documents showing inheritances rerouted, letters that revealed favoritism disguised as concern, and photos of meetings I hadn't known my mother had attended. As I flipped through the folder, a realization hit me so hard that I had to sit on a nearby stool to steady myself. Everything I thought I knew about my family was a carefully constructed illusion. And then the man looked at me gravely. "There's one more thing, Julia," he said, "something that changes everything, but you have to promise me you'll hear it all before reacting. This will hurt, and it will betray everything you believed about your parents." My heart pounded. I nodded. "Are you ready?" he asked. I swallowed hard, gripping the folder tighter. I have to be. There's no turning back now. And just as I braced myself, the garage door creaked. Not the one I had entered through, the other one. A shadow fell across the floor. I turned slowly, and in that instant, I realized I was not alone. Standing there in the dim light of the garage was someone I never expected to see, someone whose presence could destroy everything I thought I knew about loyalty, love, and family. And in that moment, I knew that the real battle had only begun. I froze, my heart hammering in my chest. The shadow didn't move. The dim garage light caught just enough of the figure for me to see a familiar face, a face I thought I'd never see again. "David?" I whispered, my voice trembling. He stepped forward, and the light revealed the sharp lines of a man in his late 30s, eyes steady, expression unreadable. David, my childhood friend, my confidant during years of loneliness, the only person outside my family who had ever understood me. Except he hadn't been outside my family entirely, not really. "Julia," he said quietly, "I didn't want it to be like this, but your mother and Vanessa, they brought me in to watch over things, to guide certain outcomes." My stomach dropped. I had expected betrayal from my mother, from Vanessa, but David? Someone I had trusted implicitly? You were working with them all these years?" I demanded, my voice cracking. He shook his head, urgency flashing in his eyes. "Not like that. I never agreed to betray you. I was forced to stay close to them, to report certain things. I didn't know about the letter, not the inheritance, anything that extreme." I felt a mix of relief and rage. Relief that he hadn't fully betrayed me, rage that he had been so close to the source of my humiliation. The room spun slightly as I tried to process everything. "Then why are you here now?" I asked, gripping the folder tighter. David's gaze dropped to the floor. "Because you're ready to see the full truth. There's more than just inheritance, more than favoritism. There's a secret your mother has been hiding since before you were born. It's why Vanessa has always had an easier path. It's why she's different in ways you've never understood." I felt a cold dread crawling up my spine. "Different? What do you mean?" "Julia," he said softly, "Vanessa isn't your sister, not by blood. Your mother, she adopted her secretly, years ago. She needed someone she could shape, mold, control, someone who wouldn't challenge her. And you've always been inconvenient to her plans." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. My hands shook violently. "That's impossible. She's my sister. We grew up together, shared everything." "I know," David interrupted, voice gentle but firm. "And that's why it's so painful. Your mother created this perfect narrative to manipulate both of you. You were meant to feel inferior, to always question your place. And now it's all unraveling." I sank onto a stool, trying to steady my breath. I felt a strange mixture of grief and anger. My whole life had been framed by this invisible hand, shaping how I felt about myself, how I measured my worth. Every slight, every favoritism, every dismissive glance, it had been orchestrated. So everything, my achievements, my struggles, all the times I felt invisible, it was all scripted? I asked, voice breaking. David nodded slowly. Not entirely. You've always been capable, strong, resilient, but your mother counted on your doubt, on your uncertainty. And tonight, the inheritance letter, it was meant to break you, to prove you'll never be enough. I gritted my teeth. I had felt that sting in the garage, the hot surge of indignation and humiliation. But now, armed with the truth, the sting transformed into fuel. "So, what do we do?" I asked, my voice steadier now, full of determination. "We expose it," he said firmly. "We make sure the family, the public, anyone who matters sees the truth. But carefully, step by step. You can't let anger blind you." I took a deep breath, letting the weight of the folder in my hands ground me. For years, I had been invisible, manipulated, silenced. Tonight, I would reclaim my voice. But then a noise from behind froze me in place. A slow, deliberate creak of the garage door. Not the door I had entered, but the heavy main garage door. I spun around, my stomach knotting. Standing there, bathed in the dim light spilling from outside, was my mother. Her eyes were sharp, calculating, the same cold gaze I'd always feared. But now I saw the fear behind it. "So, you've found the folder," she said softly, almost amused, but the amusement didn't reach her eyes. "And you've been listening to David. Clever girl." I swallowed hard. "Why? Why all this? All these lies?" She stepped closer, and suddenly everything I thought I knew about control, power, and family fell away. "Because, Julia, power is the only language that matters in this family. You were never ready for it. Until tonight." My pulse raced. The room seemed to shrink, the shadows stretching towards me. I realized, with a sinking chill, that I was standing in the center of a storm far bigger than I had imagined. And then, Vanessa stepped through the side door. Her expression was unreadable, but her eyes glimmered with something I'd never seen before: malice, satisfaction, and perhaps triumph. I felt the walls close in, my mother, my sister, David, and the folder, all converging in a web of lies and control I hadn't fully grasped until this moment. "So, what's your next move, Julia?" Vanessa asked softly, stepping closer. I stood tall, gripping the folder like armor. My heart pounded, but this time it wasn't fear, it was clarity and resolve. I had prepared for this. Every moment of doubt, every slight, every dismissive glance, it had all been practice for tonight. "I fight," I said steadily, eyes blazing. Vanessa's smile faltered just slightly, but it was enough. Before I could take another step, my mother's hand shot out, slamming the garage door shut behind me. The lock clicked, the light flickered, and in that moment, I realized this confrontation wasn't just going to be verbal. Someone in this room had a plan to trap me, and I was about to discover just how far my family would go to protect their secrets. The click of the lock reverberated in the garage like a judge's gavel. My chest tightened. I wasn't just trapped physically. I was about to be trapped emotionally, mentally, in the chaos my family had orchestrated for decades. But instead of panic, a strange calm settled over me. I had anticipated betrayal, manipulation, deceit. Tonight was the culmination of every slight, every favor, every word of praise withheld. My mother stood on one side, her posture perfect, her eyes cold and calculating. Vanessa lingered behind her, smirking ever so slightly. David remained near the workbench, his expression guarded. He had warned me, but now the reality of the situation hit harder than words ever could. "So," my mother began, voice smooth, almost hypnotic, "you've discovered our little secret, our carefully maintained family dynamics, and now you think you can challenge them." I swallowed hard. The folder in my hands felt heavier than ever, laden with the truths they had tried to hide. Every inheritance document, every manipulated letter, every photograph showing my mother's calculated favoritism. This was my arsenal. "I've seen the truth," I said, voice steady, "and I'm done playing along." Vanessa laughed softly, a sound designed to cut through confidence and leave me doubting myself. "You think a folder and a few pictures give you power? That's cute, Julia, but power here has nothing to do with evidence. It has everything to do with control." I met her gaze, unflinching. "Then it's time that control ends." My mother's lips pressed into a thin line. Bold words, but do you really understand what you're stepping into? You've been living in a fantasy world, thinking your life had meaning outside our guidance. The reality is harsher than you imagine. I took a step closer, my heart pounding, but my mind razor sharp. "You underestimated me, Mother. You underestimated me because you thought I would always be the obedient, overlooked daughter. You thought I'd crumble at your approval or lack thereof. But I have been preparing for this my whole life, and tonight, I'm not just standing up, I'm reclaiming everything you tried to take from me." Vanessa's smirk faltered slightly. She hadn't expected the fire in my voice, the clarity in my eyes. "Reclaim everything?" she repeated, tilting her head, voice dripping with mockery. "Do you even know what you're up against?" "I know exactly what I'm up against, and I know exactly what I need to do." David stepped forward, laying a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "Julia, remember, this isn't just confrontation, it's strategy. Every word you choose, every action you take tonight matters. You've got leverage now. Use it wisely." I nodded, gripping the folder like a shield. Every memory, every slight from childhood, every manipulated event now fueled my resolve. I was no longer the scared, overlooked daughter. I was the one who knew the truth, who held evidence, who understood the dynamics that had kept me small. "So what now?" I asked, voice calm but carrying an edge that made Vanessa flinch imperceptibly. "Do you threaten me, try to intimidate me, or do you finally tell me why this all matters so much to you?" My mother's expression darkened. She took a slow step toward me, her heels clicking against the concrete floor. "You don't understand, Julia. Family is about legacy, about survival, and you're not just a daughter, you're a threat, a reminder of what could have gone differently, of choices I made that were necessary." I clenched my fists, forcing the rage into something I could control. Necessary for whom? For you? For Vanessa? Or for the lies you've told me my whole life? Her eyes narrowed, and for a brief moment I saw fear, or at least calculation, flash behind them. "Be careful what you say. You're playing with fire." I smiled, bitter but confident. "And you've been underestimating me for 32 years. Maybe it's your turn to feel the burn." Then Vanessa stepped forward, suddenly bold, her voice sharp and cold. "If you think a folder and a few secrets are going to topple us, you're wrong. You'll learn tonight that loyalty, deception, and control, they run deeper than you can imagine." I froze, sensing something shift in the room. Her words weren't just threats, they were a warning. And at that moment, I realized the real danger wasn't just what they would do to me, but what they had already set in motion. A soft click echoed from the corner of the garage. My eyes darted toward it, and my stomach dropped. The garage door handle, the one leading outside, it was moving, slowly, deliberately. "Mother, what is that?" I asked, my voice taut. Her lips curved into a thin, dangerous smile. "Oh, Julia, you've only just begun to understand. You've found evidence, secrets, and allies, but there are things you'll never control, and some doors, once opened, can't be closed." My heart raced. I realized that whatever was coming through that door was not just a stranger, not just an ally or enemy. It was someone who could destroy everything. The weight of decades of betrayal, manipulation, and preparation all seemed to converge on that single moment. And in that instant, I understood. My family had built a labyrinth of lies around me, and I was standing at the center. Every step I had taken, every strategy I had planned, every ounce of courage I had summoned, it was all about to be tested. I braced myself. The garage door swung open. Standing in the doorway was someone I never expected, someone whose arrival could either save me or destroy me, and they were holding something that would change everything I thought I knew about my mother, Vanessa, and the Prescott family legacy. The garage door swung open with a slow, deliberate creak. My heart felt like it had skipped an entire beat. Standing in the doorway was a man I hadn't seen in years, a man I thought I would never see again. His presence filled the room with an electric tension, one that made the air itself feel heavy. He was tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a long coat, and his eyes were sharp and calculating. But it wasn't his stature that shocked me. It was his identity. "Uncle Marcus?" I whispered, disbelief lacing my voice. The man smiled faintly, just enough to make me question whether he was friend or foe. "Hello, Julia," he said, voice smooth, controlled. "It's been a long time." Memories flashed unbidden, the summers I spent at his house, the late-night talks where he had encouraged my curiosity, my independence, my quiet resilience. But those memories collided violently with the present, the garage, my mother, Vanessa, and the folder in my hands. "What are you doing here?" I demanded, my voice trembling, anger simmering beneath the surface. "Why now? Why tonight?" He stepped fully into the garage, closing the distance between us. "Because it's time you knew the truth. About your family, about Vanessa, about everything your mother has been hiding from you." I swallowed hard, gripping the folder tighter. "Go on." Marcus glanced briefly at my mother, who remained perfectly still, her eyes cold and unreadable. "Julia, your mother has built her life on control. She favors Vanessa not out of love, but because Vanessa is manageable, predictable, easy to manipulate. You were never meant to fit into her plans." I felt my stomach drop. Every slight, every exclusion, every whispered insult from my mother's past suddenly clicked into place. So, everything I felt, everything I've been told about being less than, it was all orchestrated? Marcus nodded slowly. "Exactly, but there's more, much more." He reached into his coat and pulled out a sealed envelope, holding it carefully as though it were fragile. My breath caught in my throat. "What's that?" I asked warily. "Proof," he said simply. "Proof that your mother and Vanessa didn't just manipulate your emotions, they manipulated the very foundation of your life, financially, socially, emotionally. And the most important part, the one thing you never suspected, Vanessa isn't your biological sister. She was adopted into the family years ago, and your mother has been hiding that secret to ensure her control over both of you." I staggered back, clutching the folder as if it could anchor me to reality. Not my sister. All this time, everything I thought we shared? "A facade," Marcus said softly. "Your mother needed someone she could mold, someone she could always favor, someone who would serve her narrative, and she needed you to think you were competing, always striving, always questioning yourself, so that Vanessa's path would seem effortless by comparison." The words hit me with the force of a hammer. I felt my knees weaken. Everything, the childhood favoritism, the Thanksgiving humiliations, the letters, the subtle exclusions, had all been designed to keep me under her thumb. And yet, in the midst of my fury, clarity emerged. "So, that's it," I whispered. "All these years, I was the inconvenient one. I was the threat." Marcus nodded gravely. "Yes, And tonight, Julia, you have the power to change that. But you have to act carefully. Your mother and Vanessa, if they sense your next move, they'll fight tooth and nail to maintain their control. I took a deep breath, letting the weight of the revelation settle in. And then I realized something. I had been preparing for this my entire life. Every slight, every moment of doubt, every struggle to find my own independence, it had all been training for this confrontation. "What do I do?" I asked, voice steady now, full of determination. He handed me the envelope. "Open this. It contains documents and evidence that will dismantle the narrative your mother has built. But remember, knowledge alone isn't power. How you use it will determine the outcome." My hands shook as I opened the envelope. Inside were bank statements, legal documents, adoption papers, and letters that exposed decades of manipulation. My mother's control was laid bare in front of me, raw and undeniable. I looked up, meeting my mother's gaze for the first time without fear. "I see you now," I said firmly. "I see everything." Her lips pressed into a thin line. "You think seeing is enough, Julia? You think knowing the truth gives you power?" "It's a start," I replied, voice steady, eyes blazing. "But tonight, I take the next step." And just as I felt the first surge of triumph, Vanessa stepped closer, her expression hardening. "You're forgetting one thing, Julia. Family isn't just about truth or lies. It's about legacy, and you can't destroy what's already been built." I held the folder like a shield, but a cold realization hit me. Vanessa wasn't bluffing. The family legacy, the control, the influence, they had built traps I hadn't even seen yet. And then Marcus's voice cut through the tension, low and urgent. "Julia, someone is coming. You need to decide now. Act or be trapped in their game forever." I turned toward the garage door, where shadows shifted in the dim light, and my blood ran cold. The garage door rattled violently, and a voice I never expected called out from the shadows. "Julia Prescott, it's time you learn the truth about who really holds the power in this family." I realized with a jolt that everything I thought I knew about control, betrayal, and loyalty was about to be shattered completely. The garage seemed to shrink around me. The shadows stretched long and twisted under the bare bulb. But now there was another presence in the room, someone I hadn't expected, someone who held the final piece of the puzzle. The air smelled sharp, metallic, like a storm about to break. "Julia Prescott," the voice called again, deep and authoritative. I turned slowly, heart hammering. Standing there, partially hidden in shadow, was my father's longtime business associate, Harold Reynolds. His eyes were cold, calculating, but there was something else, too. Resentment, perhaps, or maybe disappointment. What are you doing here?" I managed, gripping the folder tighter, my knuckles whitening. Harold stepped forward, his hand holding a thick manila envelope. "I've been keeping this safe for decades, Julia. It's proof that your mother and Vanessa have been manipulating not just the family, but everything around you, legally, financially, emotionally. And now you're finally in the position to do something about it." My breath caught. Everything I had learned so far, the letter, Marcus, the adoption secrets, was only part of the picture. This envelope could change everything. "Why now?" I asked, suspicion lacing my tone. "Why risk exposing them?" "Because," Harold said, voice low, "they've grown careless. They underestimate you, and they've made one critical mistake, underestimating the one person they've always tried to break." I stared at him, my mind racing. Every betrayal, every slight, every manipulation, it had all been orchestrated. But now I had the tools to reclaim my life. I could feel the shift inside me, a fire building from years of pain and preparation. "Show me," I said, my voice firm. "I need to see everything." Harold handed me the envelope. Inside were contracts, legal documents, and handwritten notes detailing my mother's manipulations, hidden accounts, controlled inheritances, manipulated family votes, and letters instructing Vanessa on how to subtly undermine me without raising suspicion. Every last piece of the family's carefully constructed illusion was exposed. I looked up at my mother, and for the first time, I didn't flinch. "I see it all now," I said. "Every lie, every betrayal, and I know exactly what I have to do." Vanessa's face hardened. "You think this changes anything, Julia? You're still just one person." I shook my head slowly, a smile forming, not triumphant, but determined. "No, but I've spent 32 years preparing for this moment, and tonight I'm not just one person, I'm the truth, and I'm done hiding." My mother's eyes flickered, and I saw something unexpected: fear. For decades, she had believed her control was absolute, but now, with every document, every secret, every ally I had uncovered, her empire of manipulation was crumbling. "You won't get away with this," she said sharply. "Everything I built, it's mine. It's our legacy." "Legacy?" I echoed, voice steady, heart racing. "No, it's your obsession with control, and I refuse to let it define me any longer." At that moment, Marcus stepped forward, placing a hand gently on my shoulder. "Julia, it's time to take the next step. Show them that preparation and truth are more powerful than manipulation." I nodded. My mind was already moving faster than the chaos around me. Every slight, every betrayal, every childhood humiliation, it had all trained me for this moment, and now I was ready to reclaim my life. But just as I took a step toward my mother and Vanessa, the garage lights flickered violently, plunging the room into near darkness. The shadows shifted unnaturally, and a new voice, low, sinister, echoed from the corner. "You think you've seen the truth. You've only just scratched the surface, Julia Prescott." I froze. The words weren't coming from anyone I had seen tonight. Someone else was in the garage, someone who had been orchestrating events from the shadows, someone whose influence reached deeper than even my mother and Vanessa had imagined. And in that moment, I realized the final act of this family drama wasn't about confrontation, it was about survival. A hand reached out from the shadows, holding a document stamped with a name I never expected, a name that could unravel everything about my past, my family, and my very identity. I stared at it, heart pounding, knowing that the next few moments would decide who truly controlled the Prescott legacy and my life. I stared at the document in the shadowed hand, my pulse racing. The name on it hit me like a hammer. My real father's name, someone I had never met, someone my mother had never spoken about. The implications slammed into me with terrifying clarity. Everything, the inheritance battles, the favoritism, the manipulation, was connected to a secret so deep that it reshaped every memory I had of my family. "Julia," Marcus whispered, his voice steady, "this is the last piece. The truth about your parentage, about why your mother favored Vanessa, and why she always tried to keep you in the shadows." I took a deep breath, letting the folder and the document anchor me. I felt a strange calm amid the storm, a clarity I had spent years cultivating. I had prepared for betrayal, for manipulation, for heartbreak. Now, armed with truth, I could reclaim my life. "Mom," I said, voice trembling but firm, "I know everything. The inheritance schemes, the favoritism, the letters, the adoption secrets. It's all out, and I'm done being controlled." Her face, usually so composed, faltered. A flicker of fear crossed her eyes. "Julia, you don't understand." "No, I understand perfectly, and tonight I set boundaries. I reclaim my life, my identity, and my future." Vanessa took a step back, her smirk gone, replaced with something more calculating. You think you can undo everything with a folder and a few documents? I don't need to undo everything, I said, voice strong. I just need to reclaim what's mine, my dignity, my voice, my power, and I will. Marcus handed me the envelope, filled with proof that could expose decades of manipulation. I held it like a shield, but also like a key to my independence, a key to my future. Julia, Harold said, voice steady, this is your moment. Use it wisely. I nodded. Every memory of humiliation, every slight, every moment of doubt and loneliness fueled me. I realized then that my mother, Vanessa, even the shadows of betrayal that had haunted me, they couldn't control me anymore. I had prepared too long, endured too much, and now I had the power. I forgive you, I said, softly, voice trembling, not because I excuse what you've done, but because I refuse to let your betrayal define me. My mother's face hardened, but she didn't argue. She realized, finally, that I had grown stronger than her manipulations. Vanessa's expression softened slightly too, though pride and frustration battled in her eyes. I took a deep breath, looking around the garage. The folder, the envelopes, Marcus, Harold, they weren't just tools. They were reminders that I had survived, prepared, and now could thrive. I set boundaries, I take control of my life, and I step out of your shadow. For the first time in years, I felt a lightness I hadn't known they could feel. A sense of freedom, clarity, and power surged through me. I had confronted betrayal, exposed secrets, and reclaimed my narrative. As I stepped toward the garage door, leaving the shadows and secrets behind, I turned back once. My family watched, silent, the weight of truth pressing down on them. I knew there would be tension, there would be reconciliation or distance, but that was their journey, not mine. I opened the door and stepped into the night, letting the cold air wash over me. The warmth of control, clarity, and empowerment filled me. I had prepared for betrayal, endured manipulation, and now, finally, I was free. And in that freedom, I realized something vital. Truth is power, preparation is strength, and no family secret can diminish the resilience you build when you refuse to be broken. I walked away from the Prescott legacy, but I didn't walk away bitter. I walked away prepared, empowered, and healed. I had discovered that boundaries, truth, and self-reliance are more valuable than any inheritance, any family approval, any illusion of loyalty. Have you ever uncovered a family secret that changed everything? How did you reclaim your life afterward? Share your story in the comments.